Hey, good morning, everybody. How y'all doing? Welcome to our fourth and final TACO program for the Eastern Energy 2020 Expo. I'm John Barba, the follically challenged gent. To my right is Dave Holdorf, your OESP 2020 Dan Holohan Instructor of the Year. Again, major kudos to you, Dave. This thing is going to be, we're going to be celebrating this for months to come. You realize this, don't you?
Yes, I do. I do.
It's a seriously big deal, and we're very proud of you. Anyway, thanks all for being here. We do appreciate the gift of your time today. And I guess I got a couple questions for you as we get started. Well, first of all, I just want to do a real quick uh, illustration on how to use the system here in case you have not seen it yet. What I'd like you to do for navigating the control panel, you should see on your control panel this little orange arrow. If it's pointed to the right, click on it, and then it'll point, or if it's pointed to the left, I'm sorry, if it's pointing to the left, like what you see here, click on it, and that will expand your control panel. All right. The only purpose of that is I want to make sure you see this little section down at the bottom. Okay, this little section way down at the bottom, which is where you're going to type in your questions. So if everybody could do that for me and just type in a hi, hello, how are you, or something along those lines. That way I know that A, you can hear me, and B, you kind of know how this works. Because one of the things I'm going to ask of you guys as we go through the session is I'm going to ask questions, and I want you to ask questions as well. So if you have a question, any kind of a question as we go through this, please ask it, and we'll do our very best to answer it for you. If we know the answer. If we don't know the answer, we'll tell you that too, because I don't know, between Dave and I, we don't know everything there is to know about hydronics. Nobody does, but we'll do our very best to get you the very best answer that we can. So please, if something doesn't make sense or something sounds a little screwy or just doesn't, get it, please ask, and we're happy to stay on as long as you guys want to fully answer all of those questions for you.
And the other reason for asking questions or answering questions and whatever we ask of you out there is to make sure that our internet connection is still good. If it happens to go down, we don't know it, and we end up
That's
talking to
right.
ourselves for a few minutes. And I remember in the beginning days of online COVID, and I was going on and on for about 15 minutes until I got a text from somebody said, "Hey, Dave, we lost you."
Yeah. Yep.
So
That
just yeah, go ahead.
Now, welcome to the world of COVID-19 quarantine and webinar living. That's kind of the way it goes. So, yeah, so we will be checking in with everybody periodically. So I've got four of you to respond. I'm presuming the rest of you are asleep at the wheel. One thing about these sessions that we've learned over the years of doing them, and we've been doing webinars since 2010, is if the best thing you guys can do on your end is to treat this like a classroom session. That means having a pen and a pad of paper in front of you and taking notes like you would in a classroom. Yeah, you're going to get a recording of this session. That's not a problem. But the best thing you can do to stay focused and to stay engaged is to take notes. Otherwise, it's really tempting to go check Facebook, or Twitter or whatever. And then you're just wasting an hour. Stay engaged, ask questions, take notes. Those are the things that'll work out best on your end for really understanding and absorbing what we're talking about. The topic of the session is the truth about variable speed circulators. And when we put this thing together, I just kept thinking about one of my favorite movies of all time. I love Westerns, and I love this particular Western, a John Ford Western called The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance with John Wayne and James Stewart. At the very end of the movie, when Jimmy Stewart is telling the press, the editor of the local paper, the truth about who shot Liberty Valance, it wasn't him, it was John Wayne. The editor looks at the notes, looks at Jimmy Stewart, rips up the notes, throws them in the fire, and says, "This is the West, sir. When legend becomes fact, print the legend." And that's what has happened with variable speed circulators. Somewhere, somehow, somewhere, some way along the line, these things have taken on, almost magical powers. The legend has become facts. We ask people all the time when we do a class, why do you use variable speed circulators? And we get some of the wackiest answers. And these are things guys believe because that's what they've been told. All right. They think these things will do things that they don't do. Variable speed circulators, ECM variable speed circulators do incredible things, but a lot of the stuff we assign to them, they do not do. And it's very, very important. It's very, very important. If you're going to use these things, and you should, there's a lot of benefits to them, that you use them for the right reasons, not for some of the legends, not for some of the legends. One of the legends is they save energy. Okay, what kind of energy? Well, electrical energy. How much electrical energy? Butt loads. Well, how much is a butt load? All right, how much is a butt load? In most cases, on the residential side of this business, we're talking about fractional horsepower circulators, a standard efficiency 007, a standard efficiency 0015 three-speed circulator, your Grundfos alternatives, your B&G alternatives. They're all about 80 watts. All right, 80 watts. That's a light bulb. And maybe they run for about 2,500 to 3,000 hours a heating season. That's about $30 a month worth of energy that they use during, let's say, a 7-month heating season. You average it out, it's about $30 a month. Hey, let's cut that in half. We've saved $15 a month. That's good, but it's not life-changing money. People think it's going to have this dramatic impact on your electric bills. And chances are you're not even going to notice it. It's good. It's a very good thing to do. And it's what the energy savings does, people, is it essentially makes it, if you're in a non-rebate state, if you're in a rebate state, don't even worry about this, but if you're in a state that does not provide energy rebates, and which lowers the cost of the circulators, basically what the electrical savings does is it eliminates the added purchase price within 2 years. So what I'm trying to say is your customer is going to buy this variable speed ECM circulator anyway. It's just a matter of whether you give it to them or not. That's to my thinking, that's the way to look at it. They're going to pay for this circulator one way or the other. It's just a matter of whether you let them have it. Okay. So yes, they save energy, but it's not life-changing energy. People just going all crazy about, oh, they're going to save so much energy. There is an energy savings element to a properly applied, sized, and programmed ECM circulator that can help the overall system work more efficiently. That's the bigger prize, not the electrical savings, but the overall energy efficiency we can promote with a proper application of an ECM circulator. Here's one of my favorites. Well, they always give me the right flow. That sentence is about 80% correct. It's about 80% correct. It needs 2 more words at the end of it to make it 100% correct. They always give me the right flow, hardly ever. So a lot of people think ECM circulators have some sort of magical internal system that says, well, right now, today, I only need X amount of GPM, and that's what I'm going to give you. No, they all work basically the same way in that they work on system curves and pump curves. Delta T pumps, which we're going to talk about, are a little bit different, but they operate within similar parameters. So they don't always give you the right flow. They may give you less flow than a fixed speed circulator under certain conditions, but that doesn't mean it's the right flow. We're going to go over that so you really get that as well. They take the thinking out of it. They do the thinking for you. I've heard well-respected trainers in this industry say those very words, and that to me is borderline absurd. No, they don't take the thinking out of it. No, they don't do the thinking for you. We love to call them smart pumps, but the truth is they're not that smart. They don't take the thinking out of it, nor should they. If anything, all of these educational programs you've been going to at all the OESP shows in the past and the virtual ones we've had this year have been the exact opposite. Not taking the thinking out of it, but let's put thinking into it. All right. If you take the thinking out of it and they do the thinking for you, what do we need professionals for? Right? A marginally competent handyman should be able to put it in. If all I got to do is push the button and it'll do the thinking for me, what value is your lifetime of education and experience and learning and understanding? What value is that anymore if the circulator does all the thinking? And that's one part of it, but the other part of it is they don't take the thinking out of it, and they don't do the thinking for you. You still have to know how to make these things work for you and understand what they do and what they don't do. Some more, hey, push the button, it'll figure it all out for you. That is a wives' tale of the highest order. There's no such thing. I know there's a little button there that says, we have one that says active adapt. Grundfos has auto adapt. You can push that button, it figures stuff out for you. That's not what that does. Not even remotely close to what that does for your typical American residential system. And again, we'll discuss that as well. They're magic. I've had, how does it work? Well, it's magic. It's magic. It's European. It's magic. Again, utter nonsense. Absolute utter nonsense. These things are terrific circulators. Don't get me wrong. They do fantastic things, and they can add a lot to your system. They can actually Applied properly, a variable speed circulator can enhance the overall efficiency of your system rather than limit it, but you've got to know what they do and how to set them up properly, like anything else, okay? Like anything else, all right? So where do these legends come from? I think, again, they come from a lack of understanding. It comes from that promise of, hey, fancy technology, it's plug and play. I've heard guys say, well, these things are like plug and play, right? Those are the worst words in our industry because nothing really is plug and play. Everything you've been told is plug and play. Has it turned out to be that way? Really, no. You still got to know what to do with it. A lot of times they come from people selling these things that don't really understand them, but they want to give you a reason to use them. So these myths start to get perpetuated. All right, and one of the things both Dave and I are good at it. We're serial hornet's nest pokers, right? If something doesn't make sense, we want to poke it with a stick and see what the heck's coming out. And this is really what we're looking at here. These legends are just things that don't make sense and they need to be poked with a stick. How do variable speed circulators work? Almost exactly like regular circulators, if you think about it. It all comes down to pump curves and system curves. Variable speed circulators, whether they're a delta P variable speed circulator, will have fixed pump performance curves, or operating curves. They're going to work on a specific curve, okay? The system curve exists in any piping system, and we're going to explain what that is in a minute. But suffice it to say that a variable speed circulator and a fixed speed circulator and a 3-speed circulator, all of them are going to work at the same point where the system curve intersects the pump curve, the pump performance curve. It has to. Energy in equals energy out. Whatever that pump performance curve says the circulator is going to work at, that's where it's going to work at. The point where it's going to work is where the system curve intersects the pump curve. The system curve requires just a little bit of explanation. It's a hydronic fingerprint. It's a specific mathematical curve, theoretical curve that every piping circuit has, and it's unique to every piping circuit. It's unique for each zone, for each zone and for each system. All right. Why do we care? Well, listen, we'll do a lot of math, and we're gonna go over it in a second. A lot of math to figure out, hey, I need 4 gallons a minute at 6 feet ahead. We do a lot of math to figure that part out. But the minute we slap a circulator on here, we're never going to work there ever. We're always, always, always going to work at that intersection point. That intersection point might be 7 gallons a minute at, let's say, 8 feet ahead. Well, I only need 4 gallons a minute under design conditions. I'm giving it 7. We're over pumping that zone. Over pumping, understand this, gang, over pumping is the #1 chronic problem we have in residential hydronics today, because it's so easy to over pump. And the other thing about over pumping is what's the one call you guys are scared to death of? What's the one call you don't want in the middle of winter? It's always Christmas Eve, middle of winter, blah, 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 middle of the night, blah, blah, blah. We don't want that no heat call. We don't want that call that says, I don't have enough. Over pumping will never give you that problem. People say that the only problem I have is they're freezing to death and blaming me. Okay, let me over pump. That's why 3-speed pumps. What's the most commonly used speed on a 3-speed pump? Well, it's speed 3 or tie speed, or what we call contractor no callback mode. Why? Because, well, if a little is good, a lot is better. And if a lot is better, everything the damn thing can do must be best. Let's set it to speed 3 and get the hell out of here. We're over pumping, but nobody's freezing to death. Over pumping has other problems, which we will discuss, but that's the reality of the situation. Now, a lot of guys ask, how do you come up with the system curve? Well, it's kind of a complicated mathematical formula that you don't need to know. What you really need to know is that it simply is that it exists. We do a lot of math to figure out 4 gallons a minute at 6 feet ahead. We do that arithmetic. Using a math formula, which again, you don't need to know, but you do need to know it exists, I can figure out, okay, 4 at 6, what would the head loss be at 5 gallons a minute? What would the head loss be at 6 gallons a minute? What would it be at 7 gallons a minute, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I plot it out on this pump curve chart. Remember doing charts and graphs back in like 5th or 6th grade math, and you thought this was a monumental waste of your time and you'd never use it in the real world? Well, today's the day. Once we do that math, we can put these different points on the plot, connect the dots, and there's our system curve. And the point where the system curve intersects the pump curve, that's where the system operates. Whether it's a variable speed pump, delta P type, or even a delta T pipe at some point, or a fixed speed circulator, that's where it's going to work, right? That's the important part to know. So again, here's that look. Let's say I got a zone valve system, 7 gallons a minute at 5 feet ahead. I do a little bit of math and I figure out all these different points, and then I reach my intersection. And this is where the system's going to operate at 9.5, not at 7. Okay, all zones calling, it's always going to operate right there all day, when all winter on the coldest day of the year. That's where it's going to operate. And we'll show you in a sec why that's important to understand. All righty. So let's size one real quick. Just go over this really, really quickly we can give a quick review on how to size a circulator. Let's say I've got one zone of baseboard. It's a big honking zone, 30,000 BTUs. That's a big loaded zone, all right, 30,000 BTUs. I'm designing to a 20-degree delta T, meaning the water goes out at 180, comes back at 160 for a 170 average, or 140, 120, however you want to slice it, same thing. And I'm using 100% water. The formula, of course, is GPM equals BTUH divided by the product of delta T times 500. That's the universal hydronics formula. So in this example, I have 30,000 divided by 20,000. I can find the flow rate. 20,000 or 20 times, I'm sorry, 30,000 divided by 20 times 500. 20 times 500 is 10,000. 30,000 divided by 10,000, that gives us a flow rate of 3 gallons per minute. All right, there's half of my equation for sizing a circulator. The other half of the equation is to estimate head loss. This is your Friday afternoon 4 o'clock way of doing it. This will always overestimate your head, and it leads to oversizing, but it's safe. It's safe. Best you can do, measure the run as best you can. All right, and the run is from the gazouta side of the circulator all the way around the system back to the gazinda side of the circulator. That's how far that circulator has to make the water move. So you measure that run as best you can, and it may include a sizable amount of estimating because you don't have x-ray vision, you can't see through the walls. So maybe you say, okay, I'm going up 5 feet over 10, that's 15 feet. I'm going down 30, that's 45 feet. I'm going over 20, that's 55 feet. I'm coming back 40 feet, that's 95 feet. I'm coming over 15, that's 110. I'm coming down 10, that's 120. That may be the best you can do. All right, that may very well be the best you can do in terms of estimating, and that is acceptable, but that's the least you should do as well. So you measure the run as best you can. Next, we have to allow for valves and fittings and things that are in the way, right? Those have pressure drop as well. For example, a 3/4 inch copper elbow has the same pressure drop as 2.5 feet of straight copper pipe. A 45 has the same pressure drop as 1 foot of pipe. A T has the same pressure drop as 5 foot of pipe, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to allow for that. We can't count them, so we have to estimate. How are we going to estimate? We simply multiply that measured run by 1.5. We're adding 50% to the length to allow for valves and fittings and other stuff that's in the way. Okay, so we multiply by 1.5. Measure the run, multiply by 1.5. That gives us something called the total developed or total equivalent length. It's the length that we would have if we flattened out all those fittings into equivalent lengths of pipe, and that's how long the run would be. So we multiply by 1.5 to allow for those fittings and things. And then lastly, to estimate the head, we're going to multiply by 0.04. For every size of pipe, it's the same number, 0.04. And 0.04 represents 4 feet of head loss for every 100 feet of straight, properly sized pipe at the maximum flow rate for that size of pipe. So for 3/4 inch copper, we're estimating the head as if the flow were 4 gallons a minute. It's only 3 that we need, but we're estimating as if it were 4, so we're overestimating by actually quite a bit. For 1 inch pipe, we're estimating as if the flow rate were 9 gallons a minute. 1 inch be inch and 1/4 would be 14 gallons a minute, 1.5 would be 22 gallons a minute, et cetera. It's the same number. We don't have to change 0.04. All right, so we measure the run, multiply by 1.5, and multiply by 0.04. Oh, what happened there? We got to go back. There we go. All right, let me ask you this real quick. Any questions as we go along? Are we all good? How's the pace? Give me some feedback, guys. Let me know how you're doing. This is one of those checks to make sure the internet connection's still good and that what we're sharing with you actually makes some sense. All right, we got to know how to size a circulator before we get into variable speeds, and we will get into variable speeds in just a moment. So give me some feedback, type in there, see how we're doing. All right, total measured length for this example is 100 feet multiplied by 1.5, 50% for the fittings and stuff. That's 150 feet for total developed length. To estimate the head, let's multiply by 0.04. That gives us 6 feet ahead. So this big honking zone, all right, this big honking zone, this 30,000 BTU zone, I'm overestimating the head at 6 feet. So 3 gallons a minute at 6 feet ahead. I don't know if that surprises you or not, but that's kind of what we're dealing with. 3 gallons a minute at 6 feet ahead. That's what we need. So when we go to a pump performance curve chart, here's our 3-speed circulator. We'll focus on the 0015 as opposed to the 0010. 0010 is a unique circulator designed to be a replacement for B&G 100s or Takeo 110s, the old Red Baron, stuff like that you might see. High flow, lower head, flatter curve circulators. It's a good service pump for those types of applications. The 0015 is your more industry common 3-speed pump. The Grundfos 1558, the B&G NRF 22, and any of the others out there have almost identical pump performance curves. It's a good pump. It's not a one pump fits all. That's another topic for another day. But it's a good pump to use for certain applications. If this is a single zone, let's look at the pump curve chart. 3 gallons a minute at 6 feet ahead. That's what I need. Okay, and here is my requirement. Now, what speed would you select? Obviously, you'd select low speed here. Now, how many of you, if without doing the math, if someone said, hey, there's a 30,000 BTU zone, here's a 3-speed pump, and you didn't do any math, seriously, how many of you would have gone right to high speed? All right. If you did that, if we were to plot out a system curve here, and I'm going to estimate it here. If we were to plot out a system curve, it might look something like that. Okay, it kind of shoots up like a rocket ship. It's not a straight line. It's kind of a algorithmic exponential. That's the word, increase. So if I were to put this in and I set it at low speed, I'm at just a shade over 3 gallons a minute. That's not bad at all. That's a decently sized circulator, and that's something we could be happy with. If I went to medium speed, I'm now at 4.5 gallons a minute. I only need 3, but I'm giving it 4.5. That's over pumping. If we just said, screw it, I'm going all the way up to high and contractor no callback mode, I'm at 5 gallons a minute. What does that mean? Well, let me show you something. 3 GPM, and this is all preparation for your variable speed pump. 3 GPM equals 30,000 BTUs divided by 20 times 500, right? It all balances out. It makes sense under design conditions. But we're not giving it 3, we're giving it 5. Okay, we're giving it 5. What has to give here, people? A lot of guys say, well, you'll get more output. Don't want more output, don't need more output. 30,000 BTUs is design conditions, gang. I don't need any more output than that. So at design conditions, I'm not going to take any more output than that either. Right, Dave?
Best analogy is, all right, you go ahead and put a V8 and a Volkswagen Bug. Right. But all you do is drive the car to the corner deli just to get the paper and coffee in the morning. Right. Yeah, you can get there really fast, but this doesn't, it's not going to do anything different for you here.
It might be a little bit more fun to make that ride, but still.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you make sure you put the wheelie bar in. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, Herbie Takes Manhattan or whatever that. Never mind. We'll forget. No love bug jokes today. What has to give, guys? What has to give? This is a question for you to answer. What has to give? I'm looking for some answers from you out there in the audience. If I'm over pumping, 30,000 BTU stays the same. Something has to give here. What would it be? Okay, type in your answers. I'm looking to hear from you. Right, Mike. The delta T gets smaller. You've been to enough of these. I know you know this. The delta T gets smaller. Absolutely. It has to. I'm over pumping. For this to balance, the delta T is going to get smaller. Right now, I have 60% more flow than I need. I have 60% more flow than I need under design conditions. Chances are this delta T here might, under the best of circumstances, might be about 12 degrees. Yeah, velocity, absolutely, Rick. You're going to have velocity issues as well. Now, 5 gallons a minute and 3/4 inch pipe, you still might be okay. You still might be within the relative guidelines, but you might not be as well. You might have some velocity noise issues, but the bigger problem is a 12-degree delta T instead of a 20. What does that mean? Well, the water's going out at 180. It's not coming back at 160. It's coming back at 168. Or with a ModCon boiler, it's coming out at 140, not coming back at 120. It's coming back at 128. What's that boiler going to do? Jim says, yeah, the boiler's going to go nuts. Absolutely. It's going to short cycle like crazy on the coldest day of the year, the day it's supposed to cycle the longest. All right. And that's the best you're ever going to see here, people. That's the
This is
best you're ever going to
yeah,
see.
best case scenario. Best
Yeah.
case scenario. That's it. Yeah. So,
If we
and
were
also don't forget, we also estimated a whole bunch of information just to get to 3 gallons a
right,
minute at 6 foot ahead, right? So
this
we were already oversized.
right, this is an artificially optimistic view of the whole situation too, as Dave said. And how does it get worse? Well, 50% load, 15,000 BTUs. I'm still pumping away at 5 gallons a minute. That's going to drop to six, a delta T of six. And we're going to spend 50% of the normal heating season. This is statistically significant. 50% of every heating season is spent at 1/3 load or less. Oh, wrong way. Less than or equal to 10,000 BTUs for 50% of the heating season. So most of that heating season, we're going to have a delta T less than 5. Tell me how that is an efficient boiler. All right. Tell me how that's an efficient system. It isn't. This is the danger of overpumping, people. And this is something we deal with each and every day. But you'll never get that phone call that someone says, I'm cold and it's your fault and it's because of the pump. All right. You may have stuff. The other side of short cycling is we wear out moving parts well before their time. Okay, everything short cycling, you can wear out an igniter, an ignition module, a blower motor, some expensive service part on a boiler long before it's time. All right. These are all things that happen. Well, they use crappy components these days. That's why that happened. No, no, man, we short cycled them into an early grave. All right, that's the reality. And that's what variable speed circulators do. What variable speed circulators can help. All right, that's what variable speed circulators can help. I don't always use variable speed circulators, but when I do, I always know why. That's the most interesting man in the world. There you go. All righty, so let's take a look here at the variable speed lowdown. The variable speed lowdown. What do these things do? Why do they do them? And how do I apply them properly? We give you two different variable speed solutions through TACO. We have delta P and we have delta T. We're the only company that'll give you both. Our delta P pumps are less expensive, a little bit simpler. The delta T circulator varies its speed to maintain a specific delta T in the system. It's kind of the Cadillac or the Mercedes of the line, if you will. A little bit more expensive, a little bit more sophisticated, but they both can fit into any application. They can fit into any application. So let's take a look. They are similar, of course, but different. Delta T, let's talk about the Delta T circulators first. The VT2218 is our Delta T circulator. Why Delta T? Well, math, that's why. GPM equals BTUH divided by delta T times 500. All right. Well, let's take a look at this. We know the BTUH is going to vary in any hydronic system, right? It's going to vary based on how cold it is outside. The colder it gets outside, the bigger the load gets. The warmer it gets, the smaller the load gets. We know that's going to vary. In a zone valve system, it varies not only based upon the outdoor temperature, but it also varies based upon how many zones are open at a given point in time as well. All right. So if you had a 3-zone zone valve system, you've got 7 different combinations of zones that could be open at any given point in time. That's going to vary the load. Well, we know the load varies. If the flow rate is fixed, like it would be with a fixed speed circulator, all right, if the flow rate is fixed, well, then the delta T is going to have to vary, right? No matter what time of year it is, no matter how many zones are open, my flow is going to be essentially the same, all right? It'll change as zones open and close, but it's still going to be on that pump curve. My delta T is really never going to be what I designed it for, which was 20 degrees. However, so what'll happen is these two will vary together. But what if we fixed the delta T? Then what's going to happen is these two will vary together. The flow will vary with the load. Delta T is the only way to do that. All right, that makes delta T very unique in our world. Now there's a big old asterisk that comes with this, and I'll tell you, but with a fixed delta T, the flow will vary with the load based on both the weather and based on how many zones are open and closed. All right. So again, the delta T is fixed, the load is lower, the flow goes down. The delta T is fixed, the load goes higher, the flow goes up. That's simply how it works. In theory, we have an infinite number of pump curves, and in theory, we have a circulator, the only circulator, delta T is the only circulator whose pump curve will adjust to meet the changing load. Delta P pumps don't necessarily do that. Delta T pumps do. The pump curve will adjust to meet the changing load. Again, that has to come with an asterisk, as we'll see. Here's the pump performance curve for the VT 2218. We call it the 2218 because it peaks out at 22 gallons a minute, and I'm sorry, 22 feet ahead and 18 gallons a minute. Line B here is the max speed. Line A is the minimum speed. So it'll work anywhere and kind of automatically adjust anywhere within that green section. All right, within that green section. So let's say I had my 3 gallons a minute at 6 feet ahead. 3 gallons a minute, 6 feet ahead. Bam, it's going to work right there on the nose where that little happy smiley face is. So that, in this example, this is going to be the maximum speed that circulator runs. All right. And that's going to be, the speed range is anywhere from 9 to 59 watts. That looks like it's going to be about 13, maybe 14 watts max. So now think about this. Instead of an 80 or 85 watt circulator running this setup, I got a 13 watt circulator running the setup. That's not bad. Now, as it gets warmer out, obviously the BTU load is going to go down. It's not 30,000 BTUs. It might go down to 25, 20, 15, blah, 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 that sort of thing. What's going to happen is the speed then will slow down to maintain that 20-degree delta T. It has two strap-on sensors. One goes on the supply, one goes on the return, okay? The delta T pump doesn't care what the water temperature is. It just cares about the difference between what goes out and what comes back. I've heard some people say, well, that's going to mess up your outdoor reset. No, not at all. It doesn't care about the outdoor reset. It doesn't care what the water temperature is. The outdoor sensors will set, and outdoor reset will set the water temperature. All this is going to do is make sure we have a delta T, the widest delta T possible for as much of the time between the supply and return, which will help the boiler work better. Now, as it continues to get warmer outside, this maximum speed is going to drop until I hit minimum speed. And once I hit minimum speed, you know what? It's not a variable speed pump anymore. It's a fixed speed 9-watt pump, and it's going to work right there, all right, at about 1.5 gallons. Are you going to overpump under those conditions once we reach that? Absolutely. Absolutely. Once we reach about 50% load, which is 1.5 gallons, 15,000 BTUs, once we hit 50% load, it's a fixed speed circulator. At that point, I'm not going to have a 20-degree delta T anymore, but the point is I'm not going to have a 6-degree delta T either. That's the value of a delta T pump. Now, is it worth it to buy a delta T pump at the price? And it's not an inexpensive circulator for that level of variable speededness. That's a question you have to answer on your own. Okay, in some cases, yeah. In some cases, maybe it's not what you want to do based on the budget of the job. What I will tell you is the bigger the job, the bigger the zone, the zone valve jobs is almost a no-brainer, but the bigger the job, the more, if I'd say I'm working right up here somewhere, 6 gallons a minute at 9 feet ahead. Now I have that degree of variable speediness. Now this thing becomes really, there's a lot of value there. There's a lot of value for a delta T pump. Alrighty, folks, let me ask you some questions. Does that make sense? Dave, do we have any questions out there?
No, we're doing all right now. So,
all right,
but
we've either put you all to sleep or what? I don't know, man.
Just remember with that delta T circ, I had there is that bottom end, and we have the tendency to zone by circulator in the industry. So I remember getting a phone call from a guy, and he's telling me that we made a bad batch of delta T circulators twice because he pulled them all out and put new ones back in again. And I call him up, he's at his house. It's in his own project, in his own house. And I said, great, tell me more about the project. And he says, 1,200 square. And I'm thinking per zone. He goes, no, that's the whole house. I have 4 zones. And he put 4 pumps in, and he was never getting above that bottom line. He sat there at the bottom line at 9 watts of power all the time. That was the maximum speed his zones needed. So he said, well, how do I get a 20? I'm never going to get a 20. I said, there's one way you're going to get a 20. He goes, all right, tell me. I'm like, put in zone valves and take out 3 pumps. He didn't like that answer.
And so, even then, you're going to get a 20, maybe a very small percentage of the time.
Right,
okay?
Right. It was.
So, yeah, that's kind of the key of the delta T pump. You're going to have that 20-degree delta T when it gets colder out, but again, you've got that minimum speed. You've always got to be cognizant of that. The bigger the system, the bigger the job, the more variable speededness you're going to have. The smaller the zone, the smaller the application, the less you're going to have. Doesn't
Here's
mean it's
here's
not a good pump to use, but just understand that reality. Go ahead, Dave.
and here's another good reason to consider it too. When you have that cast iron boiler, that oil boiler that's sitting there, and the homeowners are getting, so to speak, enticed. But it's only 10 years old. You put it in for them 10 years ago, but they're seeing these brochures and they're hearing from their friends that have that wall hung boiler, because it's white and it's sexy and all this other stuff. Um, and you will probably give them a quote to go replace that boiler because that's what they called you in for. And you give them a quote, they look at it, they're like, no, we're good. We're good with our boiler here. You have to listen to what they said or what they were asking you. They weren't asking you for a sexy wall hung boiler. They were asking you to lower their fuel bills. And by dropping in a Delta T circulator, you can get that out of a cast iron boiler. You can see some percentage because now you're sipping the BTUs out of that boiler. Bang it up to 180 degrees that it needs on a design day, but it's not designed. And because when's the boiler most efficient?
When it's off.
No, when it's got a long run time. So you want to suck it all the way down and then make it run, bang it back up again, right? But yes. So when you're sipping those BTUs when it hit 180 degrees, all right, slowly cool that thing down. Because if the zone satisfies and shuts off and you've got BTUs stuck in that boiler, all it does is go up the stack. All right. So, friend of mine, he saved at least 12% fuel by just changing to a Delta T circulator one day on his cast iron oil boiler. Done.
Right. If it's the same one I'm thinking of, it was he saved that amount of energy in I think it was a 30% colder winter too.
Colder winter too. Yes. Yep.
Yep.
So just pay attention to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you actually have the ability to widen the firing differential a little bit, if you have an adjustable firing differential on that boiler, what Dave said is you sip BTUs out of that boiler, you can, under certain circumstances, satisfy calls for heat without ever firing the boiler. And again, it doesn't get any better than that, right? Because you're just taking the BTUs out of that boiler before you're asking it to fire again. So that's what a Delta T pump can do for you. So that said, why Delta P? Well, Delta P, a Delta P variable speed circulator, adjusts to changing pressure differentials within the system. And what it tries to do is maintain a fixed pressure differential within the system, a fixed pressure differential. It's not reacting to what you need for flow. It's simply reacting, in this most obvious example, it's the zone valves opening and closing, all right? It's trying to maintain a fixed pressure differential within the system. If a zone valve opens, internally, the pressure differential changes. The circulator will adjust its speed to maintain a fixed pressure differential within the system. We'll show you that in a second. As a zone pump, is something to understand about Delta P pumps. When used as a zone pump, it's never going to vary its speed because there's nothing in that particular zone that's ever going to ask it to change. It's never going to change its pressure differential, right? Pressure differentials change in a system with zone valves when they open and close. As a zone pump, the pressure differential never changes, the speed never changes. It doesn't mean you shouldn't use one as a zone pump, because you may be able to set this up very, very accurately to run at maybe 18 or 20 watts instead of 85, and there's a value there. All right, and we get the circulator to run closer to its requirement. There's a tremendous value there. Just don't expect it to vary its speed. That's not what it's going to do. All right, people like Delta P pumps, and quite frankly, we sell a lot more of them because they are less expensive and there's no sensors to deal with. You have to strap on sensors with the Delta T pump, and some people are cool with that. Some people don't want to be bothered. That's fine. But this actually, the Delta P pump does happen to be less expensive and a lot simpler. I mean, a lot of people like simple. There's no light show here. There's no stuff flashing all over the place. It's simply a simple, either not 007E, no adjustments at all, 0015E3, 3 settings. 0018E is kind of cool. We're going to show you that at the end. The speed will vary in a zone valve application, but the performance curve is fixed with the Delta P pump. Here's our 0015E3. If you like 3-speed circulators, what the 0015E3 does is it addresses the inherent weaknesses of existing 3-speed circulators. And the inherent weakness of the TACO 0015 standard efficiency, the Grundfos 1558, the NRF 22 from B&G are the same. They have 3 steep pump curves where you don't really need them. Steep pump curves are helpful in radiant systems primarily, which are lower flow, higher head applications. But in in any kind of a zone valve system or a zone pump system, steep pump curves tend to cause more issues than they solve. What the 0015 E3 does is it gives you 2 flat curves plus 1 steep curve if you need high speed, and it's contractor no callback mode. But what we have here is 3 settings. Low setting gives us 5 foot ahead constant pressure. Medium setting gives us 10 foot ahead constant pressure. And then high speed is full speed, fixed speed, and it runs on that pump curve. So our zone pump that we did before was 3 gallons a minute at 6 feet ahead, right? 3 gallons a minute at 6 feet ahead. Well, which setting would you select there? All right. If you said medium, think about it, because remember we estimated the head. We did that measure the length, multiply by 1.5, multiply by 0.04. I said we estimated the head on the high side. All right. I know that head loss is going to be probably closer to 3 than it is to 6, quite frankly. At this point, that low setting is going to be more than enough. So it'll actually run right here, right on that guy's chin, right there on the 5 foot ahead constant pressure line. And that's where it's going to run. And in that case, that looks like it might be running again about 14, 15 watts, maybe. All right. The operating range for this circulator is 5 to 44 watts. So that may even be less than 13 or 14. That could be about 10 or 12 watts. But that's the speed it's going to run, and it's going to run there all the time. And even if that 6 foot ahead was accurate, here's something to understand. Even if that 6 foot ahead was accurate, I think I'd be okay running that at 5, because I gotta remember flow and head are based upon load, right? The only time I have, and again, let's do a system curve, look kind of like that. If it was only doing 3 gallons a minute, 5 foot ahead instead of 3 at 6, here's the worst thing that's going to happen to you. The absolute worst thing that's going to happen to you is that under design conditions, as long as you got the BTUs in the boiler to make it work, under design conditions, the worst thing that's going to happen is maybe that delta T is going to stretch out to 22, 23, 24. That's the worst thing that's going to happen. That's not a horrible thing. As long as you got the horsepower in the boiler to deliver the BTUs, this thing will work okay. Now, you can't make that statement if my requirement was up here. We'd be pushing a little bit, but it's close enough is close enough in this case. So in that case, I'd still use the 5 foot ahead constant pressure line. All right, very simple, very straightforward. All righty. Now, if I was doing zone valve, let's say I was using a variable speed circulator in a zone valve application. In this case, 7 gallons a minute at 5 foot ahead. Here's my delta T pump with all zones calling and with just one zone calling. So under design conditions, I'm just bopping back and forth between those two performance curves. Again, as it gets warmer, both of these lines are going to drop till at some point I'm a fixed speed 9-watt pump. And it's going to be somewhere before I hit 50% load, because 50% load would be 3.5 gallons a minute. Here's my requirement. So how much of the, so at that point, I am a fixed speed 9-watt pump, because with the system curve, it's going to have to do that. So if I were to look at this, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to be a variable speed pump, maybe 35 to 40% of the heating season, the coldest time. The rest of that time, it's going to be a fixed speed pump. Am I okay with that? In this example, probably I would be, but you make that call yourself based on what the cost is. If you were to do that same job with, let's say, the 0015 E3, 7 gallons a minute at 5 foot ahead, well, Glorioski, Captain Kilowatt, we're working right there. Okay, my smallest zone, 2 gallons a minute at 4 feet ahead would be here. Actually, whoops, let me go up here. Actually, I'd be working right up here. And my variable speed range would be between here and here. But here's the thing, it's going to operate on that line all winter long. So at 50% load, all right, would be 3.5 gallons a minute. I need to be down here. In fact, I'm running up here. So my delta T is going to be 10. So I'm making that trade-off, cost of the circulator, which is not a huge jump if you're talking about replacing the whole system, or I don't know how much it would be, but it would be something. I'm talking about maintaining a wider delta T for a bigger chunk of the heating season versus, all right, 50% of the heating season, I'm going to have a 10-degree delta T. That's just the way it's going to be. You make that call. One circulator is going to enhance the efficiency of the system. This circulator not going to enhance the efficiency of the system over a fixed speed circulator, but not as much as a delta T circulator. So you have to balance those two out. It's the price, the simplicity, and the ultimate end of the road performance, which is going to work best within the entire system for your customer with their budget. So you work within those parameters. All right. Now, how does a delta P circulator? How does a delta P circulator vary its speed? What we have here's a delta P circulator in constant pressure mode. What happens is a computer programmer has programmed in a boatload of different performance curves in that circulator. So it's all done on algorithms. There's a bunch of performance curves in that circulator. So in my zone valve job, I need 7 gallons a minute at 5 foot ahead. But for giggles and grins, let's say I set that 0015E3 to the 10 foot ahead constant pressure line. This is important to understand because this is how these things work. As we said, it's pump curves and system curves. System curve for 7 gallons a minute at 5 foot ahead is going to look sort of like that. So in reality, I'm not getting 7 gallons a minute under design conditions. I'm working up here on this pump curve, but I'm really getting closer to say maybe 8.5 gallons a minute, more or less. All right, if I had picked the 5 foot ahead line, I'd be closer, but just to make a point. Now, when a zone valve closes, I'm going to get a new system curve. I'll have a new system curve. And what's going to happen is it's going to act like a regular circulator for about a nanosecond, meaning I get a new system curve. Zone closes. I'm actually going to be working up here for about a nanosecond. I'm going to follow that same pump performance curve. It's going to be working up here. The internal logic is going to see a change in amp draw and say, no, that's wrong. We have to slow down. We have to slow down because I want to maintain this level of performance. So what's going to happen is I got my new system curve. The operating point simply going to look like it slides right down there. All right. So it's going to go up here real quick and then boop, right back down. Now the zone closes. I'm going to go up here on that pump curve real quick and then boop, right back down, and it's going to slide over there and so on. Another zone closes up here, boom, right back down again. So you can see with all zones calling, I was working on this pump curve. With my smallest zone calling, I'm working on this pump curve, using less electricity, using less energy. So that's kind of how delta P works in a nutshell. There's no magic, there's no button, there's nothing like that. It's simply how it works. All right, and here's an illustration of how that works and how you consume less wattage as we go along. Now, Dave, I'm going to turn this over to you because I want you guys to see the 0018E, our Bluetooth circulator. And it's what the 0018E is. It's a multi-feature, multi-function circulator that's good for zone pumping, it's good for zone valves, and it's good for thermostatic radiator valve applications if that's what you do. But it's equipped with a little Bluetooth radio that connects to an app. Now, before you start thinking, well, that's a toy, you got to understand it's a tool that allows you to fine-tune this circulator about as well as a circulator can be fine-tuned. The more you understand how this thing works, the more valuable this circulator becomes in setting up a system that not only keeps people from freezing to death, but actually optimizes the performance. And then you can verify the performance with a printout, with an actual something visual. And it's a very cool circulator in that it gives you fixed speed options, infinitely adjustable fixed speed. So if you like 3-speed pumps, this thing, if you go by watt, it's about a 39-speed pump, okay? If you go by half watt, it's a 78-speed pump. How many speeds you want? It's an infinitely adjustable fixed speed circulator. And it's also has 9 different constant pressure settings for your zone valve application. So you really get to fine tune that. So Dave, I'm gonna turn this over to you. I think you've taken the con. So let's show these guys how this thing works, because it's a neat application, very simple to use, and it's something that, again, you adopt this stuff. You're elevating the level of professionalism to an unbelievably high degree. So Dave, take her away.
Alrighty. So, and remember what John was saying about it's not a toy, it's not a gimmick or anything like that thrown into the circulator. At first, when I heard at Takeo that we were doing this, I was like, all right, yeah, that's really cool. All right, because I'm a tech guy, I'm a numbers guy. I wanted to see what was going on. And then I thought about, well, maybe not. I mean, do we really need Bluetooth in a circulator? So as they develop it up at the factory, they give me a call and they said, come on up. We want you to take a look at it. We want you to mess around with it because we're too close, meaning the engineers and marketing, and they've been looking at it. So they went and built a display like this one that I have behind me. And I show up at the factory, and there is, they got a conference room reserved, and there's about 30 people in the room. And I come walking in, and I'm like, no, no, no. I came, I grabbed the display, and I left, and I went to another room by myself. I said, I can't have you guys telling me what you want me to see. I want to be as if it was you out in the field taking this out of the box for the first time and using it. The only thing I didn't do was install a circ. All right, I've done tons of those in the past. So, but downloading the app, talking to the circulator, of course, at this point, there were no instructions. There was no booklet in the box itself, but nobody reads the instructions until there's a problem afterwards, right? So you wanted to figure it out how to do it first. So that's what I did. As soon as I logged into this thing and started using it, I saw some amazing stuff. And I'm going to start the app up for you here. So for one, you see here on my screen, you'll see that little 0018 app that's on my screen there. So go right to the Android store, go to Apple store, and you can easily download. Take a look for Taco, but also put in 0018E. It'll pop up. Otherwise, you're getting a bunch of taco stuff. So, so download it. It's a free app. Now, one of the nice things about it is when you log in, you can actually start using this circulator, this app, without having purchased a circulator. So if you see right there on the screen, it says choose a circ, and it says demo or first floor. If you choose demo, then you're just getting to use the app to get familiarized. So you don't have to learn in somebody's basement. You can figure it out for yourself there. So here, you also get to name the circulator anything you want. So I have actually named this one first floor. So the first thing that pops up is the demo, and then you see first floor. And it's not like pairing a headset or something to your phone or pairing it to your car stereo. It is just a handshake. It is just a communication just for that time period. So if you take a look at the light on the circulator, let me move the camera. You don't need to see me. Okay. So I'm going to select on first floor. And what you should see is that light starts to flash. That means I am now communicating. We're shaking hands back and forth. And what I get, because this circulator has been running for at least 45 minutes already in the background, we're seeing the actual operating point of that circulator right now. So here's what the coolest thing was when I logged into the circulator for the first time was this information that you can see down here at the bottom of the screen. It is telling me the actual gallons per minute working. It is telling me the foot ahead. It's telling me the watts and the RPMs. That's cool. But here is what I thought was the coolest thing ever, that you can now see inside the pipe in a residential system. All right, we can actually see what's going on. Every system we have ever installed, every system we have ever designed, as soon as that last guy walks out the door, what do we all do? We pray and hope that it works. Yeah, we spent all this time doing the math and we spent all this time putting it all together, and we still pray that it's going to do what it's supposed to do. Now you can look inside the pipe and say, that's what I wanted it to do. That's the coolest thing that I saw about having this circulator in there. So it's not a gimmick. It's going to prove that you did your job. So right now, it is only telling me what it's working at. I can't make any adjustments because it's in the, so to speak, safe mode. Safe mode is nobody can walk up outside the house and connect into it and mess around with it. It is just in a read-only mode. I can't make any settings changes. So if I try to change a setting, I get a warning on the screen. Let's see. Do you see that? There it is. All right. It's in read-only mode. In order to get out of read-only mode, you have to go to the circulator, take it out of the Bluetooth mode, and then put it back in. All right. Now everything comes alive on the circulator itself. Now I can change my settings. So right now this is in the zone valve mode. This is in that constant discharge pressure that John was talking about, where it's going to speed up and down. So you see right now at 3 gallons a minute, 5¼ foot ahead, I go ahead and change out 2 zones. Watch the dot. It's going to shift to the left. It's going to bop up a little bit and then come back down. So now it is slowing down to do what it needs to do for just one zone running at the moment. These 2 zones closed down, just one is up and running. So it slid and stayed on that curve. If this isn't the proper curve that you want to operate at, meaning when you did your initial estimates of your head loss, I need to be at a higher head. Well, now instead of the 15 that only gave you 2 choices, now we have 9 choices. And you can see the lines, and all you do is tap the line on the curve, on the screen itself, and it's going to run that curve. Or you can use the arrows to choose back and forth which curve you want to do. Your choice. So now you can see that it's speeding up. It's now doing 10 foot ahead. Now it's at about 16 watts of power, 3,600 RPM. And it's following the curve, right? That system curve that we talked about. Every job has its own. It's a unique identifier. It's a fingerprint. It's operating on that curve. If you're in your zone pump mode, click at the top of the screen. All right, the top of the screen, it says zone circ. The light now changes to blue because we're in that fixed speed but variable speed mode. As you know, as wherever you want it to speed, whatever speed you want it to run at, all we do is grab this little slider bar at the top. So right now the circ's running at 100%. It hit the top end of the curve. It's running 3 gallons a minute, 17.7 foot ahead. All right, 36 watts, 4,800 RPM. You grab that slider bar, and it's going to slow down. So the dot hunts for a second. It is an algorithm that's trying to figure it out, but it's looking at that pump curve also and trying to figure out where it's going to go. So as we do that, and we slide back and forth, it also has TRV mode, 9 different curves. If you know which curve you're going to run at, it will slide up and down on that curve here. All right, again, just tap on it, whichever one you want to do. And the one thing that we've done unique to just the app is the active adapt. Active adapt is if you don't know which curve to run at in TRV mode, this will figure out which TRV curve you want to run on. But remember, it's only for TRVs. It's only for constant circulation, proportional pressure, bypass valves, things like that, that it's going to operate on. So what it does is it's going to start on the second from the third from the top curve and figure out if it has to go up or down, but it could take some time. So it needs to
almost 2 hours before it'll do anything.
Right. It's going to see how long it's running at that curve. And if it's at this low end, if it stays way down here, it says, you know what? I want to probably be a little bit more in the middle of the system itself. It might bop down to this line. If it was operating way up here on this end of the curve, it's going to say, all right, we're going to bring up to here so I can slow down a little bit. It's all about power consumption and trying to use the least amount of power, but still giving enough flow out to the system. So it's going to learn as it goes on. So, but we don't do what I've seen a lot of this auto circulators that are out there. They'll start on the bottom and they'll work their way up, which could be a problem for some systems because they need to be up here and it might not do anything for 2 hours and it's getting colder and colder and colder and it's a phone call and it's a nuisance. So we want to start on higher and work our way down if we can, because hey, if it was a fixed speed pump, we'd be way out there anyway, right?
And then important to understand any of these auto or active things, it's a specific application for thermostatic radiator valve jobs with constant circulation. It's not that magic button that you push it and it sizes itself in any application and we're good. That's one of those legends that we talked about earlier that's just simply not true. And it's unfortunate that a lot of folks believe that, but that's not how it works, man. It's just not, it's not what it does. Hey, Dave, do me a favor. Go back
yes.
to. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, what do you want to hit?
Go to the zone circ setup for a second.
Okay.
If you know the flow, remember we talked about sizing circulators. You needed to know flow and head. With the 0018E, you only have to know the flow. If let's say you're using this as a zone pump, and you know the flow requirement for that zone is 2.5 gallons a minute, 25,000 BTUs, 2.5 gallons a minute. You don't have to figure out the head. You simply adjust that slider until the GPM reads 2.5 gallons per minute. It will tell you what the head is. You don't have to calculate that part out. You just have to have a good idea of the flow rate. So again, Dave would adjust that slider back and forth until we reach 2.5 gallons a minute. We've got the head. All right. By the same token, if you're trying to size this for a zone pump job, you still would start off in the blue mode. You would just need to know the total flow rate for the zone valve application. And say in our example was 7 gallons a minute, you would adjust that slider until you reach 7 gallons a minute. The app will tell you what the head is. Then you go to the zone valve selection portion and pick, like say again, say it came up with 5 foot ahead, you go to the zone valve, the pink mode, and then or the orange mode rather, and then you pick the 5 foot ahead constant pressure line, and bada bing, bada boom, you have sized your circulator about as well as it can be done. All right, and the only math you had to do is figure out the flow for the house. And that's all I mean, and that's what you should do anyway, but that's kind of where you're at. That's how this circulator can help you. And Dave, why don't you show the other parts? The
Yep.
reports are very cool too for verification. Again, that professional leave behind. It says, this is how this system's working.
So, well, I'm sure a couple people have seen a few things on the screen here. So
All
it's
right.
showing you working hours, it's showing you shutdown. So it's how many times the circulator cycled and how many hours it's run. If you happen to see an excessive number of cycles, you're over pumping. So you might want to slow it down. All right. If you slow it down a little bit, you'll be, so if you were still kind of guessing on where it's going to go and where it needs to be at, and you see a number of cycles, just make sure everything is working properly. Total power that it's ever used. This is also pretty important, the alarms. The alarms is the sure start. It's the air purge function, or it's the seized rotor function that we have that it's going to automatically correct. If you happen to see alarms pop up in here and you put this circulator in an existing system, you might need to take a look at your air elimination. Maybe you've got a 400 vent, you've got something that's clogged up, something not pulling the air out properly, or check the pressure in your boiler too, right? So you may have that issue. And if you happen to see the seized circulator, then it might be time for water treatment, all right? Whether it's going to be adding in a dirt separator in the system or adding in some chemicals. So you need to watch out for that. So you could actually get that if it ever went through any of those cycles. It's an automatic correction, so you may never see it happen. It just may have happened, but now you'll actually know that it's there. So that features in all of the ECM circulators, but if on the 18A, if you happen to see it, then at least you can do something about it. Now, across the top, there's 3 bars here. I want to get to the menu. And we click on the menu, and that's going to pop open, and you're going to have a few more features. You can change the circuit. You can only talk to one circuit at a time. It's taking a little while to pop up on your side, isn't it? Oh, you don't see it at all, do you? Right, John?
What aren't we seeing here? I'm sorry.
Oh, I hit the 3 bars, so I don't think my app translates onto the program too well. So,
Ah,
all right, so I can go in. So when you click on this, I can go ahead. Well, maybe, let's see here. I can change circulators. It's going to look for other circulators that are out there. All right, it's not popping. All right, so my app is not translating as well. Oh,
oh, there
that's
you go.
why. Nope, I lost my broadcast from my my iPad. So let me redo this. Hang on 1 second. I got to
And Dave is
remirror.
using kind of a special program to be able to project his iPad on the GoToWebinar, and it's a
Yeah,
little touchy. It's
it's
not
not
the
the
app
18
itself.
app. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the app itself. It's a program he's using to project the iPad on GoToWebinar and share the screen. It's kind of touchy. There we go.
There we go. So this is what I wanted to show you was right here. So now you can see that, right, Jay?
Yep, got it.
All right, so you can click on change pump. You can change some of the settings in the system itself, as in if you wanted to change into metric, general information, get to the websites, reporting. This is the cool stuff. So if I were to click on reporting, you can get data about the circulator itself. And I think it didn't pop up again. Oh, there
Oh,
we
there
go.
you go.
All right. And I can grab some data about the circulator itself. Now, if I had named all this stuff, it would show up right here. Or that would be my information. So this is all stuff saved on the app itself. But I can go and click on a report, one that I want to show you that I created already. Crap. Excuse me. The app crashed again. Of course, it's been sitting here running the entire time,
And again,
just
that's
waiting
not
for my answers.
that's not the
Not the
0018
18
app.
app.
That's the
Yep.
sharing app that he's using to be able to show you your screen.
There's not a lot of them out there available, and it's not
Yeah, they're not
reconnecting.
very good that we've seen.
I got to restart it.
Yeah, but what that app you do that, but what the reports will show you is it'll give you the address of everything. If you're connected to the internet, it'll give you GPS coordinates if you really want that stuff of the job itself. It will give you the actual performance parameters of how you left it. Okay, where's that circulator running? It'll tell you what mode it's in. It'll print out the performance curve. It'll show you a picture of the performance curve, where you left it and where that system's operating, both in a picture, and it'll tell you flow and head and all that other good stuff. It'll show you all that. And you can take as many pictures of the job as you want and include them in the report. And then the report is shareable as a PDF. You can text it, you can email it, you can print it if you have however you want to do it. So all that stuff, all that performance stuff is verified. This is how I left the job last time, Mrs. Johnson. It's not in that operating mode anymore. Well, my husband got it, and okay, let's get out the checkbook. We're going to fix this.
Yep.
There you
So
go.
here's a bunch of reports that I had created on, and it's saved on the device, not the circulator itself. So here's one that I had done, and looks like I was in Michigan City, because you can actually take pictures of the job site. So I happened to be out in Michigan City doing a training class and showing the circulator. So I took a picture of the training room. So that's everybody that was there that day that came to hang out with me. And you can add multiple pictures into here. And based upon the number of working hours, the flow rate, the shutdowns, the head, where you left it. So I left this one, happened to be when I created the report, it was in the the active adapt mode. And then you can hit share as PDF. And if you wanted to zoom in, you can zoom in on it. Just tap on the picture and it'll zoom in on, so you could see where it was running when you left. And then share that, send that PDF out to yourself, to the customers, wherever you want it to go. If you happen to come back a year later, go create a new report. Create a new report, and then go ahead and compare the two and see where they're at, see what happened, how many working hours, how many shutdowns that you had over the time period. So now it's giving you more data on what's happening with the entire system. So it gives you a tremendous amount of information that you can get out of these circulators.
Very cool. Very cool. And then and knowing what to do with that app, that turns this from a toy into a tool, and it allows you to, again, we as an industry, we get very wrapped up about, hey, let's combustion analysis, let's fine tune that boiler and make it as get that combustion as clean and as super efficient as possible. And we'll do some math about, let's find the flow and head, size the BTUs, let's size the boiler properly, let's do all this stuff, and let's just slap a pump on it and go home. And the
Right.
circulator, as we've learned, one of the things variable speed circulators have done for us is it's allowed us to really understand and illustrate the importance of the circulator and overall system efficiency. As we saw earlier, just slapping a 3-speed pump on contractor no callback mode and getting the hell out of there basically undoes a lot of the good we just did. Yeah, we can fine tune that combustion, great. We can size that boiler perfectly. We can do a really A1 professional job, and then click, 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 high speed, get out of there. We've undone a lot of the good that we did. We are intentionally putting a cap on the overall efficiency of that system. We're not letting it live up to its potential, simply because of convenience. Understanding what these things can do for you, now we can finish the job, man. We can get that combustion perfect. We can fine tune the circulator, which the circulator has more to say about overall system efficiency than we've ever given it credit for. We can fine tune that thing so the flow is just right, the head is just right, and we can make sure that it adjusts accordingly so that we always optimize the overall efficiency of the system. That's what this app does for you. It gives you that level of professionalism, that level of customization, and that level of service that you can provide your customer that, again, we have not been able to offer before.
Right. We're starting to see boilers and we're starting to see water heaters and and equipment showing up online, connected to the network of the house itself. And then you can get data about it, or you can be emailed if something's not working properly or has shut down out of it. Out of a circulator, yeah, are we playing or are we thinking about it? Could be. Do we really need to have that much bandwidth for a circulator, to be online with it? So that's why we want to say, all right, how about we just marry it to the boiler and make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do? And when I was talking about that cycle count, the number of shutdowns, that's what kills circulators, right? The number
Mhm.
of cycles. And right now, so I asked the engineers one day, what's the lifespan? Well, they didn't give me a lifespan. They went and said, well, we designed our circuits to last at least 250,000 cycles, which equates to 18 years in a single zone, single pump system. And we still don't, we still see lots of those systems out there, but what's the norm for number of zones nowadays? Right. Well, one, there is no norm, but the average, we're seeing 3 to 4. So you could see a cycle count go way high quickly if you're still zone pumping out there. But at least now you can come in here and say, all right, well, we've got close to that 250,000 cycle when you came back and did a service on the house. And you're going to say, well, we should probably consider changing the circulator, or at least have one on standby. All right. Just understand we don't have to do it today. All right. And, we've seen circulators. I just got a phone call the other day on a couple of old Perfectas that were built in the late 50s that were still running in somebody's house. But then again, I'm sure somebody has replaced the 007 that was installed 10 years ago.
Right.
All right. So, it should have lasted a few more years. So, there's a lot of, it depends when it comes down to it. But now you can pay attention to that and say, yeah, we're going to make that system better. And we're going to make sure that you're not without not without heat.
Hey,
So,
Dave, what's that alarm thing on that app? What's that mean?
well, that's the alarm for the sure start that I was talking about already. So that is
Mhm.
your, if you happen to go into air purge, if you had air stuck in the system, let's say your valve mechanism is not operating here, or we have dirt in the system where we should consider putting in a mag dirt separator, or at least some chemicals to help treat the system itself. It's going to record them here. Most homeowners would never know what happened unless it didn't fix itself. So our circulators all have that ECM sure start setting in there, where it's going to rock and roll or speed up and slow down and push the air out of the system.
All right. And do all ECM circulators have that, or just certain ones?
No, just the green ones that you see here.
Just the green and black ones. There you go. Yeah. Save you a call back or two, which is not a bad thing. If
Yep,
you've ever
yep.
had a circulator, if you ever had a locked rotor in a circulator, you know what I'm talking about. This is kind of prevents that. If the circulator's ever locked for whatever reason, it'll rock back and forth to try to break itself free. And 9 times out of 10, that it'll make the problem go away before anybody even knows it exists. So, all right, folks. Hey, any last minute questions? We do appreciate your time. It's been about an hour and 12 minutes, which we do appreciate you sticking around. Any questions that you guys have there? How was this a useful program? Did you find this helpful? Any specific? Give me one thing you guys learned here today. If for those of you still on the line, there's about 16 of you out there. What's one thing you're going to take away from this? I'd be interested in knowing. So that, again, that'll help us in future presentations. So just do me a favor in that little question section. Just type in one takeaway that you took from this program that would be
And,
of use to you.
and the one thing I want to ask everybody here too: have you visited the manufacturers' pages here on the Eastern Energy Expo? All right. Um, I want to know how that section is working out for you. I'm sure we're going to get some surveys and questions and comments from the expo staff themselves, just to make sure that, hey, I'm happy that Eastern Energy Expo has put together an online trade show, that we were still able to get together. I mean, we loved going to Eastern Energy Expo. Would have been great, good time up at Mohegan Sun this year. Never got to go, but let me know how you've been doing with that. Don't forget, you can set up appointments to go see some of the best people out there. You know, when we do these trade shows, we bring down that person that you want to go see, and those people are sitting by the way waiting for you to contact them, so to speak. They're not just sitting there, you know, staring at your emails waiting for it to show up from you, but you know, they will get to you right away. So let me know how all that's working out for you. So
And we got
and
some good.
visit the manufacturers, visit and see what they've got going on there. Yeah, we just talked about a couple of products here today, but there's a ton of other stuff that's on our website, and everybody else has a ton of stuff to show off too. So
We got some nice feedback from a couple guys here. Zach says the importance of circulator performance on the system as a whole. Absolutely, Zach. That's kind of it, and the thing variable speed circulators have done is they've really opened up that door for us, and we can walk through it. And we can really make these things we have the ability to really deliver on the promise of that high efficiency that we've been talking about for all these years. Jim Todd says the benefits of Delta T circulators, and yes, he's visited some of the booths. John Saris also learned about the benefits of Delta T pumps. Anybody else out there, please share what your takeaways are today. And again, as Dave said, please reach out to either one of us as well. You'll be getting a follow-up email from us with a recording of this webinar, so you can watch it again if you wish. And again, please feel free to contact either one of us. We're happy to help out in any way we can, because with COVID, we're kind of stuck at home too. We can't really travel. So we sit at our computers looking for stuff to do. So we want to be helpful to you guys. So
yes, and the recording will also be available through Eastern Energy Expos too. So for those people that didn't get to make it, if you were to share the email that you get from John from us tomorrow, it's not necessarily shareable. So I don't think it is anyway. I'm not sure.
the
But
link
also,
to the recording is shareable. Yeah.
okay, but Eastern Energy Expo will also have it on their site too, that you can go and watch it at any time too. So when you miss us tomorrow, you can do that.
All righty, folks. Well, with that, I was going to say thanks to everybody. Thank you, Dave. Always a pleasure to co-host with you. And thank you to OESP for allowing us this time. And thank you to all of you for sharing your day with us. We do appreciate that. And we hope this was a useful presentation for you. And with that, we'll say so long and have a fantastic Tuesday. Jason, you too. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate you being here, brother.
See
But
you,
everybody
Jay.
have a fantastic Tuesday, and we will see you down the road, spell.
All righty, enjoy, y'all.
Later.